When you have to create new content, there's nothing worse than sitting in front of a blank piece of paper, whether that's a literal piece of paper or a screen with a blinking cursor on it. In this video, I'm going to show you how to defeat this problem of writer's block, and at the same time, I'm going to give you a method that will help you make a better content faster on a regular basis. Hello, I'm Shane Malach from Thrive Themes, and if you do any content marketing, I'm sure you're familiar with this problem. You maybe have an idea of something you want to create a piece of content about, but you're sitting there and just going from nothing to having a blog post ready to publish can be really difficult, and that blank page can be intimidating. Well, the good news is we can solve that problem, and we can solve it in a way that will also make your content better. What you need to apply is a content pattern. So what is a content pattern? A content pattern is, well, it's a pattern, so it's a repeating structure that you apply to your content. Let's go right ahead and look at some actual examples of this in use. So here's a blog post about analytics tools. This is a comparison review of multiple tools. We have an intro, and every post will have an intro. Usually the intro is, here's what you're going to find in this post, and here's why you should care, why this is important for you. Sometimes it's also who this post is for. Then we have title of the first, this is subheading, the title of the first product we're looking at, an image, and then a few paragraphs about what it's like to use this product. Then we have another subheading and a data table that summarizes some stuff about this product in a table. Then we have a paragraph with a conclusion and a link to the product. Then we have a subheading with a product name, an image, some text about what it's like to use this product, subheading, data table, conclusion paragraph, link. Subheading, image, text, subheading, data table, conclusion, link, and so on. This is the pattern. So we apply the exact same pattern for every product. And we basically have a loop of this. So we have like part one with a bunch of these repeating again and again. Then we have part two, slightly with just a very short introduction, and then same pattern over again. And in the end, we have a conclusion, which is usually a call to action saying, here's what you should do next. So we have intro, and then a pattern that repeats and repeats and repeats, and then a conclusion, which is a call to action. And that is our content pattern. Of course, this isn't the only one you can apply. So let's look at another example. This is from a different post presenting some case studies, some conversion optimization case studies. Again, we have an intro setting up the expectation. This is what we have in this post. Here's why you should care. Then we have a dividing line, a heading. And as you can see, it says example 1, colon, and then a title. We have some text and the before image of a landing page. Then we have discussion of what we see here. We have a subheading, deconstruction, then the deconstruction of it. Then we have a content box with a hypothesis that we set for our test. Then we have subheading, treatment. Some text explaining our treatment and an after image. So we have like before image, after image, right? Before and after the treatment. And a summary of the treatment steps, and then some more text about the case study. Then the pattern repeats. Dividing line, example 2, same heading, same kind of formatting, and a title, the before image, some text, the deconstruction subheading, the deconstruction text, the hypothesis content box, example 2, treatment subheading, and the after image, summary of the treatment, and so on. Here again, you can see dividing line, example 3, before image, and so on. So again, we have this pattern that repeats, and in the end, we have a summary and a conclusion with a call to action. Okay, final example. This is a hypothetical example, so it's a bit neater, right? Because it's not a real post. But again, here the idea would be that we have a photography blog, and we're looking at examples of great photographs to see what we can learn from them. We have an intro, which is, here's why you should read this post. Then we have a heading, we have an image that we're discussing, then we have a paragraph about what we like about it, a paragraph about what could be better, and a summary box with our conclusions, and then we have the pattern repeating, heading, image, paragraph, and so on. And what's important here to make this really work is that you really use the same pattern. So we use the same heading, we use the same formatting. If I have one like this here, I'll have a 2 here. We use the same image size, same image alignment, and so on in every loop of the pattern. So that is a content pattern in action. And there are three main reasons why you should start using content patterns right away. Reason number one, it beats the problem of writer's block. Whenever you have an idea, whatever it is that you want to write about, you think about how do I break this down into chunks. You always have an intro which explains why you should read this post and who it's for. You always have a conclusion at the end with a call to action. And in between, you have your pattern. So you break your idea down into what are the core ideas that I want to get across, or what are the products I'm looking at, or whatever else makes sense as a way to chunk your whole idea, your content into smaller pieces. And within those, you will always use the same repeating structure. So you have your subheading, your pros and cons, your content box with a summary, next subheading, pros and cons, and so on. And what you can do is you can actually start by deciding what this pattern is going to be, and then creating like a scaffolding for your piece of content. So you can literally write intro. Here is where I will explain why people should read this post, even if you have no idea yet what exactly you're going to write. And then here goes subheading 1, here I will explain this, here I'll write this, and so on. So even if you just build the scaffolding of your post as a very simple outline, this will make it a lot easier for you to write. It's much easier to have this scaffolding and kind of fill in these gaps than it is to stare at that blank page and try to create something from nothing. Reason number 2. This technique will not only help you create posts faster, it will also make your posts better. See, one of the most annoying things about content is when you read something that's just kind of a wall of text that's rambly, right? So like a rambling wall of text where you're not quite, it's difficult to follow. There's no clear structure. It's not clear. The author's mind seems to be jumping back and forth. You don't understand what's going on. That's the worst. And having a content pattern solves that problem because it forces you to think, how do I structure this? What comes first? How do I break this down? It forces clear thinking and clear communication. Apart from anything else, it also makes your posts much nicer to look at and much more pleasant to read. And that is not a trivial thing because reason number 3, using content patterns makes your posts much more shareable, much more likely to go popular and get a lot of traffic. So we've talked about this before, about the importance of content formatting. It's not just about making your post look nicer, and sure, it does look nicer if you have a nice structure with subheadings and bullet points and mixing things up a bit. It's much better than a wall of text, right? But it's about much more than that. And I have a case study that I'll link to that shows this very impressively, how improving the formatting of a post can get it a lot more shares and a lot more traffic. Now, when I was saying before that it's annoying when you read a piece of content that's just like a rambly wall of text and you can't really follow it, maybe you're thinking, I don't really ever read stuff like that online. And that's exactly right. The reason you don't read that kind of stuff online is because it gets weeded out. Nobody shares that kind of thing, right? It doesn't show up in your Facebook feed. Your friends don't go, oh my God, you got to read this. So that stuff goes forgotten in obscurity. And only the good stuff gets shared. So you could say that using content patterns to make your posts more readable and more shareable is actually essential to the success of your content marketing. Now, there's one possible problem with this. Okay, so content patterns do all these great things, but maybe you're thinking, hold on, I don't want to be a content factory, right? So I'm just going to be creating the same thing, using the same structure all the time. What about creativity? And two things about that. First of all, you don't need to use the same content pattern for every piece of content. In fact, you shouldn't do that at all. For every piece of content, you should think about what is the right pattern to use here, what makes sense in this context. And secondly, we have to make a distinction between the structure of your content and the content itself. And for the content itself, absolutely, I totally recommend that you create unique, valuable content that has your unique voice and personality, and that you don't do, generic factory-like stuff, for sure. But you can put that content in a systematic pattern and get all the benefits mentioned before. All right, what you can do right now is below this video, you can find a blog post in which you can find several examples of different content patterns to use. And we've got various examples, so depending on what you're writing about, what industry you're in, and so on, you'll find something that you can take, put your own twist on it, and use it in your very next post. So since you're still here, let's go a little bit meta. Maybe as you were watching this video, you noticed that this video kind of has something like a content pattern applied to it as well. Now, making a video is not the same as writing a blog post, but some of the same principles apply. So in this video, I opened with an intro that explained why you should watch this video and why it matters. Then I had something of a repeating structure. So I explained the problem, I presented the solution, and then I had 3 points, which was like a repeating pattern. I gave you 3 benefits, and then addressed an objection, and then I ended it with a call to action. So that's not exactly the content pattern structure, but one thing it has in common is that I had this laid out before I started recording. And that's really important because it's the same thing. If you just turn on a camera and it's like, oh, I have to talk about this thing now, then it's going to be this kind of stream of consciousness, difficult to follow, not great piece of content. But having a clear structure, breaking the content down into these pieces beforehand makes it much easier to record the video and makes the video much better as a result. So in that way, this video is kind of an example of itself.